An original podcast from podlatino.com.
When someone tries to force us to do something, we almost instinctively pull back. It doesn't matter if what they're asking is reasonable, if it makes sense, or even if deep down we already wanted to do it. The moment we feel pressure, something in us says no. That reaction, so automatic and so deeply human, sits at the heart of a very old fable that still describes us with surprising accuracy. A traveler is walking along a path. He's wearing a heavy coat tied snugly around his body. Above, in that vague space where fables place their most powerful characters, the wind and the sun are watching the man and arguing. The wind says he is the strongest. The sun disagrees. To settle the question, they propose a simple test. Whoever can get the traveler to take off his coat wins. The wind goes first. He blows. Not gently, but with everything he has. The air batters the traveler from every direction, kicks up dust from the road, bends the trees along the path. And the traveler, who had been walking calmly just moments before, reacts in exactly the opposite way the wind expected. He grabs his coat with both hands, pulls it tight against his body, hunches his shoulders, and leans forward into the gust, as if he's fighting something. The harder the wind blows, the more fiercely the man holds on. Force doesn't produce the desired effect. It produces the opposite. Then it's the sun's turn. The sun does nothing dramatic. He simply begins to shine. The clouds clear, the air goes still, and warmth falls softly over the road. The traveler, who had been tense and hunched, starts to straighten up. His shoulders relax. He lifts his head. The warmth feels good. He keeps walking, but differently now. After a while, without anyone asking him to, without any force compelling him, the man loosens his coat and drapes it over his arm. Then, completely naturally, he folds it and tucks it away. It was his own decision. No one persuaded him with words or pushed him with pressure. The conditions simply changed. This fable is usually attributed to Aesop, the Greek storyteller credited by tradition with hundreds of short tales featuring animals, elements of nature, and allegorical figures. He lived, so it's believed, sometime in the 6th century before the Common Era, though more legend than fact surrounds his actual life. What is clear is that the stories attributed to him were copied, translated, rewritten, and adapted for centuries. They passed through Latin with Phaedrus, through French with La Fontaine, through countless medieval and modern versions. The Wind and the Sun is one that survived that long journey remarkably intact. Perhaps because its central image is so direct, it needs no embellishment to land. The contrast the story sets up isn't between two characters with different personalities just for the sake of the plot. It's between two real strategies, two ways of influencing someone. The wind represents direct pressure, the force that demands, that pushes, that tries to bend another person to its will. The sun represents something different, something that doesn't always have a precise name in everyday life, but that we all recognize when we experience it. That way of acting that doesn't compel, but invites, that doesn't impose, but accompanies, that doesn't demand a result, but creates the conditions for the other person to arrive there on their own. What the fable does cleverly is show that the wind's problem isn't malice or bad intent. The wind also wanted to accomplish something, but it chose a path that triggered the traveler's resistance instead of lowering it. And that's a dynamic that shows up in many areas of real life, not just in major conflicts, but in small, everyday situations. There's something about pressure that puts us on guard before we can even evaluate what's being asked of us. a demanding tone, repeated insistence, a request with no room to breathe, and we're already defensive. Not because we're stubborn or unreasonable, but because something in us responds to pressure with self-protection. It's almost instinctive, and it happens in family arguments, workplace conversations, debates between friends, negotiations of every kind. The harder someone pushes us toward something, the more we resist, even if under different circumstances we might have gotten there on our own. The son, on the other hand, doesn't persuade with arguments. He doesn't explain why the coat is unnecessary. He doesn't prove anything. He simply changes the environment, and the traveler reaches his own conclusion. There's something in that which captures a kind of influence that works without feeling like influence. A person who listens before speaking. Someone who asks a question instead of giving an order. A tone that doesn't accuse but suggests. A moment chosen with patience instead of an urgent demand. These things don't look like strategy, but they're often more effective than any argument built with airtight logic. This doesn't mean that calm always wins or that being direct is wrong. There are situations that call for clarity, firm boundaries, and straightforward answers without softening. The fable isn't saying everything should be handled with endless gentleness. It's saying something more specific. When we want someone to change their mind, try something new, or make a decision that's good for them, pressure is usually the longest route. Not always, but more often than we tend to think. There's also something worth noticing about the traveler, that character who never speaks a word throughout the whole story. He doesn't know he's the subject of a bet. He doesn't know the wind and the sun are watching him. He simply responds to what he feels. He closes up against the cold and the force of the air, and he opens up in the warmth. His reactions aren't rational or strategic. They're just human. And in that, there's something we recognize too. Many of our responses to other people don't go through analysis first. They go through feeling. How something makes us feel matters just as much as what's actually being said. The story of the wind and the sun has that quality shared by fables that age well. The more you sit with it, the more layers appear. It's not just about strength versus calm, or just about persuasion, or just about patience. It's about the difference between wanting to control an outcome and creating the conditions for something to happen. And about how sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is let go of the pressure. Not because we're giving up, but because we understand that the other person's resistance isn't the problem. It's a signal that we're choosing the wrong path. The traveler reached his destination with his coat folded over his arm. He never knew he had been at the center of a dispute between the wind and the sun. He continued on his way at just the right temperature, calm and unbothered, unaware that he had just proven something. That's part of the fable, too. The kind of persuasion that actually works is the kind the other person never feels as pressure. It just feels simply like the moment they decided.